A few weeks ago, I hosted a business retreat. It is the fourth one that I've done for a group of business owners. And when I was documenting what we were up to each day, obviously I had lots of DMs saying, this looks amazing, I'd love to come on one, what a dream. But I also had a lot of DMs and emails actually with questions. People wanted to know, what is it like to host a retreat? What does it look like behind the scenes? Would I recommend running retreats within a business? So I figured, what better way to share more of my behind the scenes kind of learnings and insights than by doing an episode here. So this is episode number 317 of Starting the Conversation. Maybe you're listening to this, maybe you're watching this over on YouTube. Welcome, I'm your host Alice Benham if we haven't connected before. And today I'm going to be sharing with you 7 things I wish I knew about hosting a retreat. These are the 7 things that if I could go back to the me of 2019 when I hosted my first ever business retreat, I would sit her down and make sure that she knew these 7 things. So whether you are thinking of hosting a retreat yourself or you're just a little bit nosy and you want to know what it looks like to run retreats and maybe you're thinking about whether that could be a fit in your business, then this episode is going to be for you. I've got 7 things to talk about and I don't want this to be too long, so let's dive straight in. The first thing I want to say about retreats, which is probably not going to be news to anyone that has ever been on a retreat before, is that they are absolute magic. I am not a particularly kind of woo person. I like to think of myself as quite woo adjacent, not against it, but a lot of my work as a strategist is very focused on action and plans and the specific details and getting things done. And I wouldn't describe many things as magic or kind of magical, but a retreat, that is the exception for me. Every time I host a retreat, and I've hosted 4 now in the last 6 years. My first ever retreat was back in 2019, and then COVID put a bit of a pause to those, and I've hosted 3 in the last couple of years. Every single retreat, the same word just keeps coming up for me when I'm watching what's happening, when I'm reflecting on it afterwards, and that is the word magic. There is something so special and magic about the combination that a retreat creates, where people are out of the everyday. They are in a community of really like-minded, expansive people. They are doing this kind of deep business strategy work, but they're doing that work in this setting that helps them to think really clearly, think bigger, think more boldly, and also just be really focused on their businesses. What I hear from so many people when they come to a retreat of mine is, wow, it just makes such a difference not needing to cook food or think about what's happening next or look after other people or do housework. My aim, if you come to one of my retreats, is that you get a genuine retreat. You escape the everyday and you are then just able to really focus on the things that are important to you. And that combination, I think, is what creates that magic feeling. The work that I do in a retreat is very similar to the work that I do one-to-one, or I'll try and bring it into different strategy days. Don't get me wrong, I am not saying that when I do business strategy work outside of a retreat, it's not impactful, but for all of those reasons I already mentioned, being out of the everyday, being alongside other people, kind of environment you're in, all of that I think just makes this work deeper, makes the clarity stronger, makes people think bigger, and also I think helps people to end up with an action plan that feels much more doable because you've got spaciousness. With a lot of my work, I'm with someone for a day or even half a day, and we've got to think about pace and getting through everything. There's something about a retreat, which mine are over 4 days, where that spaciousness just allows you to take things slowly, to go down the tangents, to give things space. So that is the first thing I want to say, is that retreats are genuinely magic. They are so impactful. They are so valuable, I think, for established business owners that are ready to kind of get to that next level, that need that bit more clarity and strategy, that need to be around other people that can share ideas and encourage them to think bigger. So I will just say, if you've ever been thinking about a retreat, then let this point be your reminder to make that a priority. It doesn't need to be one of my retreats, although if you want to join the waitlist to come to one of my future retreats, I'm going to do my next one in January 2026. So I will leave that link in the show notes to inquire about that one. But whether you come to one of my retreats or not, I'm hoping that you'll have a similar impression, which is that environment and that work really is impactful. It's the environment that I feel what I do is the most impactful in. If I could only ever run retreats for the impact reasons, I absolutely would, because I think that is an incredible way to do business strategy. However, for the reflections that I'm also about to share, I can't run retreats all of the time. And that is because some of these other learnings that I want to share as well. So moving on from that, I feel like that is the big pro here, right? Is that they're magic, they're so impactful. Let's just come straight in with a bit of a con, or what people might see as a con, which is my second thing I wish I'd known before, and I learned very quickly with my first retreat, is that retreats are expensive, okay? Okay, there is no denying it that running and hosting a retreat costs a lot of money and is a fairly big financial risk, unless you know that you've sold the places before you plan it. It's a bit chicken and egg. Sometimes I wish there was a way that I could sell all the spaces, hit minimum capacity, and then I book everything. But the reality of booking venues and team and getting everything that you want in place is that you do have to book a lot of these things up front, and these things cost a lot. Every retreat is different. So I will say everything I'm sharing here is through the lens of my retreats, but my retreats, they're pretty luxury. Okay. I go for really nice venues. I'm talking, big bedrooms where everyone's got their own king size bed, en suites in every room, spas, hot tubs, saunas, loads of living space, like in the middle of nature. Like, I'm not just going for an Airbnb that's going to squeeze us in. I'm going for like top experience here. And that is not cheap. The accommodation is obviously a really big factor, but there's a lot of other costs that can add up as well. The biggest one that I'd add on to that would of course be your food and kind of, how you're looking after people on the week. I hire an incredible private chef for the whole of my retreats. Everyone always says all week what an amazing thing it is to have someone cooking for you. And let me tell you, there is something about the food that a chef makes that just, I don't know what they do. They are so great at what they do that it just tastes incredible. The chef that I use, I love her so much. She's done a few of my retreats now and I will forever use her if she's up for it. Used to work in a Michelin star restaurant. We're talking like chef vibes, bougie vibes here. So that's a big expense that gets added on. And then you've got all your other things that you might not expect. So you've got to get different insurances when you're hosting events and retreats like this. You'll likely need other people there to help you. If you're hosting any guest workshops or activities, there's expenditure on that. Stationery. I mean, I'm never moaning when I get to do that big old stationery order, but I do often spend a couple of £100 on stationery for my retreats. Lots of post-it notes are purchased. And then you've got all your other little bits and bobs, snacks, welcome gifts, etc. I won't keep going, but all of this to demonstrate that retreats are expensive. Okay, the profit margins are lower than, for me, any of the other offers that I have. I make the lowest profit from my retreats than I do from anything that I offer, but I'm not saying that's a reason not to run a retreat. It's just something to be mindful of and conscious about. Retreats are an investment, and at the end of the day, what you've got to think about is why you're running it and how much profit you need to get from it in order for it to be viable for you. For the reason that I'm about to share, I don't really mind that my retreats don't have a high profit margin, and I'm very aware, by the way, that I could just put up the price a bit more to get a bit more profit out of them, but I'm really happy with the price point I'm at and who that allows the retreat to be accessible to, and what people expect based on that price point. And so for me, they're expensive, they don't hold a load of profit in them, and that's not a good or a bad thing. It is just a fact to be very aware of. And one of the big reasons that I don't do them more often is because if I did them more often, the price point would need to be a lot higher for it to be viable, to be a big part of my work. Moving on from that, a big reason that I do not really mind that retreats are very expensive to run is that, number 3, they can be a really incredible marketing strategy. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. I have seen in my business that whenever I host something in person, whether that be a retreat or an event or a workshop, it really helps to not just give my business more visibility, but also to elevate the way that people see my business. When I hosted my first retreat back in 2019, I had no clue that it would do anything for my business, right? I thought, I'm hosting this thing and it's all about helping the people that are there. And of course it did that, and it was worth it for those things. But what I realized throughout the week was like, oh, it really feels like my business is growing here. Like, I wasn't just gaining more followers, maybe because other people were sharing that they were at my retreat, but I also noticed that over time, people might start to see my business maybe in a more legit way. And that's something that I see across the board of anything in person that I do. Like I said, I think there's something about doing things that are more tangible, that people can see, that helps people to go, she's not just making content online and doing like digital services. Like, this is like, a more elevated business, or it's more legit. I don't know the right words here, but I hope you understand what I mean by this. I really think they can be effective for your positioning, for your visibility, for how people perceive you. Now, important point to make here, I do not host my retreats for this benefit alone. It's more of like an added bonus for me, and it's how I also help to justify having a little bit less profit, is that I know that it's also helpful for my business too. And I'd also add to that, they're helpful for my business too, because I learn so much from them. I am with my community for 4 days. Rarely, in fact, I never get that level of kind of contact with people. A lot of the time I'm there, I'm hosting something, and then that's it. And it's so special and helpful for me to have that deeper connection, to ask more questions, to witness where people are at, what they're thinking and feeling as they go through the work, and understand more about people as well. So there's a lot of benefits for me in hosting a retreat. If I was being selfish, those benefits really do help me to make it worth it, despite the financial stuff that I just talked about. So that's the third thing around it being beneficial for my business from a marketing, positioning, visibility, and learning perspective. The fourth thing I then want to share that I wish I'd known about hosting retreats, and this is something that I think I've always known about myself, but really comes into its own with retreat running, is that guest experience for me is everything. When I tell you that I aim for my retreats to be like the most luxurious, kind of, detail-oriented environment possible, I mean it. Like, I try and think of every single step for people from the moment they sign up to, the moment they leave, what their experience is like. And this is something that I do across the board in my business. I'm really passionate about guest experience, for my clients and for my students in On It and for people that buy things from me. But I like to especially think about this with retreats because there's so many more elements that you can consider. As I spoke about already, I really focus on the environment. So hiring amazing venues, not stopping trying new venues until I find the one that I love. It's taken me 4 retreats to do that. Finding team that don't just do the job, but do the job really well and do it in the way that I would want to be represented. At a retreat, everyone that's delivering stuff represents me and my brand. So I want them to have those similar values, that similar kind of personality. And the details matter, in my opinion, with a retreat. I really believe in wider business, how you do the small things is how you do the big things. And so I try my best for every touch point to be really intentionally considered. Like, right from the moment they arrive, I think about, okay, when they walk into their room, what are they going to see? How can I give them welcome gifts that feel personal, that feel valuable, that tell them, I want you to be here and I'm expecting you, even down to the snacks that I choose and the tea that I order. Although I don't personally mind, I would choose to have, branded, nice quality snacks over perhaps other potentially cheaper alternatives. And don't get me wrong, in my personal life, I'm Audi, I'm Lidl, everything's pretty cheap, but with a retreat, I shift those gears a bit and I think, right, how can I create the most elevated, intentional feeling experience? Good example here at my retreats, we're eating Lurpak. Okay, Lurpak is important to me because it says something, right? People are paying to be in this great environment and I want every touch point to reflect that. So that you could tie quite nicely back to my point about retreats being expensive. Don't get me wrong, I think you can run a retreat that's pretty low cost, but you just got to think about what experience you want to create. And for me, part of the magic of my retreats and part of what I love about running them is all of those details and elevating things as much as possible. It's that classic quote, isn't it? People don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And I think about that a lot with my retreats. I can deliver the best workshops ever, but I really believe it's the environment, it's the guest experience, it's all those details that really help people to receive that impact, to feel really grounded and calm and welcome and to have a good experience, which ultimately is part of what you're paying for with a retreat. So that's a fourth thing I'd share over halfway through the list now. The fifth thing then that I wish I'd known about hosting retreats, which I've kind of touched on a bit already, is that you need help. Okay? You need help if you're running a retreat, at least in my experience. If you are hosting workshops, if you are there to deliver things, you need other people who are in charge of the other elements as well. And the big thing to remember here is just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. Let me give you some examples here of what I mean. With my first ever retreat back in 2019, I hired a chef. Thankfully, didn't think that I could be cooking meals. So I hired a chef who was amazing, but I just kind of assumed that every other task I would also do. And when I say every other task, I'm talking about things like, setting up the workshops in the morning, getting guests tea and coffee, putting things in the dishwasher, making sure that the spaces were clean and tidy at the end of each day, putting out any kind of, workshops or activities that we were doing, checking that people had what they needed, like all of those things I kind of just picked up. And my experience of that first retreat is that I just had too many jobs. And because I had too many jobs, I wasn't able to do the job I was really there to do as well as I wanted to, which is to be present and to see what's going on. Like, my job at my retreat is actually to kind of not have much to do so that I can be, sat at the breakfast table, sat with people in the breaks, noticing what's coming up for people, asking the questions, holding space, noticing where people need more support. Like, the busier I am, the less I can do that. And that was a big learning curve for me of realizing, I need someone to help me do this. So now I have, again, still a chef, because 6 years on, I'm still wise enough to know that I should not be the one cooking their meals. But the big change now is that I have basically an assistant with me for the whole week. So one of my team members that's that's been with me for quite a few years, Lucy, she comes to all my retreats and she is there as my right-hand woman. You know, she is making sure that guests have teas and coffees and snacks throughout the day. She is helping the chef with cleanup and serving the food and getting things in a dishwasher. She is taking B-roll and content so that I don't need to be taking photos and videos. She's basically just doing all the little bits that naturally I would go to do, but really would just keep me too busy. Don't get me wrong, I still do a lot of things like setting up the workshops and getting everything ready for the bits that I'm hosting, but there's so much to do that sits outside of that. So that is a tip I would give to anyone. If you're hosting a retreat, it might be what really takes down your profit, but you will not regret getting help, hiring people to help you, to be an extra pair of hands, and to be in the rooms that you can't always be in. You know, at my retreats, we actually live across 2 big venues because I just love people having space, and I think the more the better. And so that means that then I can have one team member at one venue and then I'm at the other. It just gives me that also just sense of calm that like there's someone around. And actually I can tell you this really saved me. A retreat that I did this January earlier in the year, I was stuck in standstill traffic for 8 hours. And I'm not talking like, oh, we were moving slowly for 8 hours. I'm talking like my engine was off for 8 hours. So I was late to my own retreat. I didn't arrive till 10 p.m. All of the guests turned up without me being there. And whilst that was very stressful and not ideal, because I had team, it was okay. Lucy could welcome them in, Lucy could sort the rooms, and Lucy could get everything prepped. So just to share that having team, you know, whether you feel like you need them or not, it's a very valuable thing to have. Moving on then, my final 2 points. This next one probably seems quite negative, but to me is just a fact of what a retreat is like and is something that I now think a lot about in advance, is that retreats are quite draining to host. When you're hosting a retreat, you are basically holding space for whatever period of time that is. For me, that's 4 days, right? People come on the Monday, they leave on the Thursday. I am basically doing 4 days of work with just like sleeps in the middle. And that's draining. I don't say that as a negative, as a like, oh, poor me, or oh, that's bad on the guests. Like me doing my job that week just is quite a draining. So that for me is a helpful learning to then help me think about what I can do to support myself. So having team there that can maybe be there at different hours of the day, setting clear boundaries with myself and with the guests about when I am there and when I'm not. For example, in the evenings, if I'm tired, like I don't have to sit on a sofa and chat for 4 hours just because that's what everyone else is doing. Actually, I've done my workshops. I'm okay to leave people to it. I don't have to be everywhere in all of the moments. So learning kind of those boundaries with myself and knowing that those are okay. If I need that space, I can go take it. Having my own room is a really essential thing as well for me. A couple of retreats, I've shared rooms with team, and it's not great for the team member, but it's not great for me either because I just need that space. I'm a real introvert to have that time. And this also I think is a helpful learning because it helps me plan my work around it. It's very much an easier said than done this because naturally a lot of my work is busy either side of a retreat to allow me to be kind of off whilst I'm at a retreat, off from like meetings and calls. But I will try and just give myself a bit of spaciousness, like the day or two before, the day or two after. I will not have big plans the day I get back from a retreat. For example, the weekend after the one that I just hosted, I honestly felt like I'd like run a marathon. I was so tired. I had nothing to give to the world and I just relaxed. I just gave myself the space that I needed. So they are draining. And that's not a bad thing, but you just have to expect that, plan for that, and think about what you can also do in the week to help yourself with that. So another example is a non-negotiable for me. When I'm hosting a retreat, I exercise every morning. I take those 20 minutes for myself to do what I need to do and just give myself the permission to kind of keep those habits that keep me energized, because facilitating in an energized way, then we've kind of lost the heart of the retreat, which is the work that I'm facilitating. So that is the penultimate thing that I'd share. And then the final thing that I'd share, which kind of brings me back to really the impact of a retreat, and I think as a host what your job really is that I wish I could go back and say to my past self, whilst you can control so much about a retreat, really your job the whole week is just to notice what's going on, to be responsive to that, and to not be afraid to slightly make it up as you go. Now I say slightly because I think sometimes I can talk about like, oh, I just make it up as I go, and like what I'm not really acknowledging there is there's a lot of like, you know, inner clarity that I have around all of my different exercises and frameworks and steps. And like I've hosted so many workshops now that I can kind of quote unquote just make it up. So I don't mean make it up in like the true I have no clue what I'm doing sense, but I do mean that with retreats I think a level of flexibility creates impact. Like when I go into my retreats, absolutely I know, okay, we're roughly going to go through like my business strategy framework. We're going to talk about vision. We're going to look at your business model, your marketing, your operations. But I don't always know exactly what we're going to do in those sessions or exactly what order we're going to do it in. And that's because I want to be responsive. I want to notice what's coming up for people and flex my plan to work with that. You know, I can plan all I want want, but really it's what comes up during a retreat tells me what the people need most. And so I wish I could go back to my past self and just say, like, that's okay. I think I used to be a little bit stressed of like, I need this big plan going into it, or it's bad if I feel like I'm kind of making it up as I go. Actually, now I know that's me at my best as a host. I go in with a plan and I let that plan evolve and shift and change shape, and I add detail to it as the week goes on, which is even more reason for me to be rested and supported so that I can kind of have that focus and that attention and be able to kind of flex and work it out as we go. That is it. I feel like I've just shared so many different thoughts and feelings, and trust me, there's still so much I could say about hosting a retreat, about the nuts and bolts of it, about just that general role of like facilitating and hosting workshops even. So if there's anything else that you'd want me to share around hosting retreats, or even just around facilitating, I think it's the thing that I'm best at, is facilitating and kind of leading those group workshops. So I'm sure there'd be a bit that I can share around kind of tips or skills that I have there. So let me know if anything would be valuable and I can do another episode on this topic. But I really hope that you have found this interesting. Whether you're thinking of attending a retreat, hosting one, or you're just curious to know more about them, hopefully this has helped to color in the picture a little bit more for you of what they look like from the host perspective. If you are interested, like I said, in attending one of my future retreats, I'm going to be doing the next one in January 2026. The inquiry form for that will be in the show notes. And something else that's so exciting that's going to be much sooner than that is that I'm going to be bringing the magic of retreats into a one-day setting in June. The recent retreat I hosted just reminded me again how impactful that combination is, where you're out of the everyday with like-minded people doing this deep strategy work. And all I could think about all week was like, how do I do this more accessibly? Like, my next retreat isn't until January, what can I do? And that's when I had this idea for these mid-year strategy days, where we focus on realigning your business strategy with your vision and set you up for the rest of 2025. There's going to be that community element, that in-person element, unless you're doing the virtual option. And I'll leave the link in the show notes for you to join the waitlist for those. I'm probably going to be kind of announcing the tickets and spaces very soon. So if you're listening to this episode when it comes out, head to the link in the show notes to make sure that you join that waitlist, or maybe by the time you're listening to this, tickets are live. They're going to be limited. So if you're excited and interested for those, then definitely move quick. But yeah, those are some next steps that you can take if hearing me talk about the magic of a retreat makes you think, I want that, I need that, I must come onto something like this. Check out the strategy days that I'm doing in June, apply to my retreat that's happening in January 2026, and let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to share on this topic.